Murphy at Murtech.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on January the 28th in the year of our Lord 2026. Let's just jump over here to Murtech on Rumble. There we go. There's my Rumble channel. This is the video we're going over tonight, episode 1821. It says upcoming, but as you know, you are actually watching it. So let's jump in here. Hi, Debbie BS. Hi, Susie Poll 2016. Glad you guys could join us. Let's jump down here and click the Show More button to expand out the description box. We have information from ACLJ, Sekulow, Benny Johnson, Dr. Steve Turley, and Wendy Bell Radio. But before we get into that, I do have some shout outs to give. Craftsman Red Box just started following my channel. Sam Ray 52 just started following my channel. Short Dog 73 just started following my channel. Ma Pack just started following my channel. And Jeffrey Schultz 64 just started following my channel. So thank you very much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate that. I hope you're tuned in, and I hope you enjoy the content. Excuse me. Okay, Debbie BS reposted my episode 1820. Uncloudy and Tiff7799 commented on my episode 1820. And Debbie BS commented on my extra 603A, 603B, 602C, and 603C. So thank you very much for your comments and reposting my videos. I enjoy reading your feedback, and I definitely appreciate your support. So let me give this a thumbs up. And if you don't mind, if you could click this thumbs up button right here below the video that you're watching, I would greatly appreciate that. Okay, ACLJ Sekulow, law enforcement shuts down pro-life speech. Imagine that. Let's see what they got to say.
I wanted to talk about this because I think the contrast here is important. When we see, once again, this is the March for Life, which is a very important day for those of us that are pro-life advocates and have been fighting for this cause for a long time. But also when you talk about what we saw in Minnesota in that church, where individuals overran the church and they got in the face and they intimidated people, and their entire goal was to terrorize people that were trying to exercise their faith on a Sunday. You have that, and you see the Justice Department rightfully going after people that were violating the law there. But what we have to fight for people that are peaceful protesters, peaceful advocates that stand with signs, and we see that governments make laws to try and make simple, peaceful demonstrations illegal. And that's what we're fighting for in Carbondale, Illinois. And we're actually having to file an appeal. Give us a little bit of background in what we're having to do today on this March for Life Day.
Exactly. So it's very appropriate that this is what we're doing today on the day of the March for Life. So our client, Brandon Hammond, all he wants to do is share the gospel outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. He's not aggressive or confrontational. He's just trying to share the message of hope and the gospel with people who might be entering the clinic. So as part of that, he has small signs like will be carried in their thousands today in DC. And with those small signs, he simply communicates his Christian message of hope and a message of life. And because of those signs, of course, the city came after him and told him he had to take away his signs. And he asked the police officers, would you go after someone else with different signs? And these police officers, they were honest. They were like, no, I don't think the city would go after it. In fact, there's even a similar sign across the street for a fast food restaurant. That sign was fine, but not the pro-life sign. No, Carbondale sent people after him to make sure that he took down his small signs that he just had with him as he was seeking to share the gospel.
And once again, we see this all over the country. And obviously, we were talking about Illinois, a state that people are like, okay, well, it's Illinois, but we see it all over the country. It doesn't matter what state, no matter how conservative or how liberal the state is. You see a lot of times municipalities make these ordinances, make these laws to target speech. But it's not just that the speech is like, we don't want any signs. We don't want the way it looks. We don't want to aesthetically detract from our city with signage. But we see time and time again, it is specifically viewpoint discrimination. It is the specifics of the speech, of the sign that they are targeting, not just the visibility of signs in general. And once again, that's what we're having to deal with here in Carbondale, Illinois.
Exactly. And in fact, we sought a preliminary injunction in this case. And when we were there in court, one of the police officers admitted on the stand that they were targeting these signs because of their message. So we're appealing this case now to the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, which is in Chicago. And there we will be arguing that the court should issue an injunction overruling the decision of the court below here and affirm the First Amendment rights of our client as he seeks to share the gospel and proclaim the truth about life. And it's particularly important on a day like today with the March for Life happening as we speak, that people stand up for the cause of life, right? The March for Life is in DC, but people are standing for life all over the country. So it's such a privilege that today we get to file an appeal for someone trying to share the gospel and the message of hope and life outside an abortion clinic.
And once again, folks, these cases, they take a while. They take resources. They take hours and hours from our wonderful attorneys like Nathan and the team in DC and around the country. But this is just on the preliminary injunction stage that we're already at the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. Once again, even if we are successful here on the preliminary injunction stage, we still have to go back to the district court for the rest of the case, for the merits of the case. And that takes time and resources. So Nathan, we're grateful to you and the hardworking attorneys at the ACLJ, but this isn't something you planned for to be filing on a Friday of the March for Life. That is because we are always ready to respond. We are always, even when you're preparing for a winter storm, always ready to be there in court, even though you were just a week and a half ago in Houston, in New Orleans, rather, on behalf of a client out of Houston for her free speech rights, being able to pray as a teacher in public school. We are all over the country, never stopping. But this is not over even here at this appeal stage. This is a long fight ahead, and that's why people should support the ACLJ as we continue to fight for Americans' rights.
Exactly. And in fact, we're really all over the country right now, particularly on issues related to life. So I got to be out in Missouri this past week for the trial there as part of a wonderful team. We have a bunch of attorneys working on that case, and I got to be there for a couple of days. And just next week, we will be in court again in Boston defending a pro-life pregnancy center that has been called dangerous and a public health crisis by the state there in Massachusetts. So the fight for life really just has intensified in these last few years. And it's just wonderful to be part of the ACLJ where we're on the forefront of so many of these important battles.
Vice President Vance speaking on the March for Life right now.
For the thousands of men and women and children, for the church groups, the school groups, the grandparents and the toddlers and everyone in between who braved this chilly Washington afternoon, all of us in the Trump administration, from the president on down, we thank you for your prayers, we thank you for your perseverance, and we thank you that for today, we are all marching for life. Now, I know a lot of us heard from the president just before this, so you know that he loves and cares deeply about this movement. And it's why he has fought for the pro-life cause and why we do it in this administration. And it's why 3 years ago, we cannot forget, he delivered and his Supreme Court justices delivered the most important Supreme Court decision of my lifetime. Because with the Dobbs decision, what we did, what the president did, what the Supreme Court did, was put a definitive end to the tyranny of judicial rule on the question of human life. He shattered a 50-year culture of disposability, one that treated human life as expendable the moment that it became inconvenient. And he empowered our nation and our movement to build a culture of life from the grassroots up. And over the last year, I got to brag a little bit, our administration has worked very hard to lead that effort and to pick up the pieces, to clean up the wreckages of 5 decades of bad policy on the question of life.
I think that this is an important moment, and I really do. When you see the vice president out there, and you know we're only a few years from another presidential election, which will serve as a new president, you have to remember the impact. When a lot of people give you grief and may say, why did you vote for President Trump? Why do you support President Trump when you see what's going on with ICE? Or maybe you disagree with some of the rhetoric. Maybe you disagree even though you voted for President Trump on some of the ways he has handled certain situations. And then you have moments like this. And understand, I've been in this pro-life fight for my entire life. No president or vice president has come out and made these kind of bold statements, other than maybe you could say, President Trump and Mike Pence probably did, but other than Trump administrations. Whether you want to push back and say, I don't know if they believe it or they don't believe it, if they're just pandering to who they think is going to vote for them. You know what? The laws say one thing, and that is that regardless if they believe it or not, I do believe that at least you have J.D. Vance here speaking very passionately. They got it done. So hold your head high and know that if you're part of this pro-life cause, should be celebrated. And over the last year alone, we have had over 200 legal pro-life matters here at the ACLJ. Because though, as Vice President Vance said, though the tide is turning and though you had something like Dobbs overturn Roe versus Wade, the states all got much more aggressive. And the ones who wanted to go as far into the culture of death have done it more than ever.
That's for sure, folks. So it's okay to bang pans in the middle of the night in front of a hotel where people paid to sleep there at that hotel and blow whistles and yell and scream and graffiti all over the windows. That's okay, but you can't hold a sign up, a pro-life sign up, within, I get 500 yards of an abortion clinic or some shit like that. Amazing, isn't it? Those are the Democrats pushing that. Okay, let me show you that this video does come from American Center for Law and Justice. I am following the channel. I've given them a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Okay, let's jump back here. Close out the chat. I did a little chatting with WBS and Susie Poll 2016. Here we go. Benny Johnson. Trump just fired Kristi Noem and Border Commander Greg Bovino. That's a question. The White House just told us this. Okay, well, let's see what the White House told them.
They're gonna need a wrecking ball to take me out of here.
What's up, guys? Spenny. I would argue that one of the worst elements of Trump's first term was that he would read a lot of the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, that President Trump would watch CNN and other corporate media channels so they could manipulate him and they'd influence him. And that would mean that good people would get fired when the press would decide to attack them. General Flynn's a good example of this. And Donald Trump lost some good people and some really strong allies because the media decided to do a savage attack on some of the best people around Trump. And one of the best elements of Trump's second term is that he doesn't do this anymore. He's realized this game and this con. And so in spite of some really ruthless, vicious lies that have been printed and smeared people like Pete Hegseth's a great example of this, Trump is stuck with Stephen Miller is a great example. I mean, how hard did they go after Elon Musk and Stephen Miller and Pete Hegseth? And they've tried so hard to break Trump away from his core of power, people that had his back. And they're trying it now with Border Patrol because they're terrified what's about to happen to the nation when we don't count criminal aliens, when we deport 20 million criminal aliens. it's going to be a real problem for the Democrat Party. They're going to have a real numbers game. It's going to make it impossible for Democrats to win an election nationally. It's just a matter of fact. You can go look at what the census is going to do to the electoral map. Anyway, so they're going all in on trying to rip apart this industrial level deportation machine that is scaling up. Greg Bovino loses his job. Did they finally get their scalp from President Trump? Did President Trump finally relent and fire Greg Bovino? We happen to be big fans of Greg Bovino. Greg Bovino is the dude who appears in this kick-ass Border Patrol jacket. He's in charge of the Border Patrol. He's the man who marched directly into the mob in Minneapolis, ordering protesters to leave the premises. Guy's got guts, man. Guy's got some major balls, and look at this. Is one of these guys who just doesn't give two F's. He's here to do his job. I've gone on some of these ICE raids. I've seen Bovino protecting his men and being part of these kind of shows of force, I guess you could call it. Greg Bovino is a dude who actually... Ooh, that is loud. This is Greg Bovino throwing gas canisters at the protesters who were attacking them. This is Greg Bovino literally gassing protesters. Okay, so you want to talk about a leader who's willing to fight in the trenches with you. This is what you're talking about. And so the media would love nothing more than to psyop President Trump into firing one of his best men. The Border Patrol chief has been ousted, said these reports. And they also said that Kristi, Noem, Corey Lewandowski, who were biggest backers of Greg Bovino, are also at risk of losing their jobs, two people told me. So I said, Trump is ready to fire them all. There you go. Now we're going to replace these guys with Ilhan Omar, right? Or whatever. Again, Greg Bovino, a legend. He's the guy who rounded up illegals outside of Gavin Newsom press conference. Gavin Newsom was inside trying to give a weepy speech, and Greg Bovino was outside arresting illegals. So anyway, just a total legend. So this was the report. There is no longer a commander at large of the Border Patrol. The position has been eliminated. This is ridiculous. According to us, we called DHS. We called our contacts there. We have immaculate contacts at DHS. And they told us that there was a major personnel change. And that was effectively demoted, back to California to be in charge of deportations in California. Still a good position for him, but a major demotion. And they expected Greg Bovino to effectively resign because of this. This decision was made by one of Tom Homan's deputies, and they were very upset at how things had gone on in Minneapolis. And that's not up to me to say whether it's perfect or not. I think a lot of this stuff by nature is imperfect. If you're going to try and deport 10 million, 20 million people, it's going to be messy. Anyway, that mess was too much for them to bear, and they got rid of Greg Bovino. And there's probably a ton of other syntax there and a ton of other backstory, but that's what I was told. I was told that Greg Bovino was relieved of duty by somebody lower in the chain, and it was on the Tom Homan team. There's no hate at Tom Homan. I like Tom Homan. I like Greg Bovino. I think they're both doing great jobs. But when you get big personalities at play, think Trump and Elon, you're going to get some frictions, and maybe that's what happened. A DHS secretary said Chief Bovino was not relieved of duties. Press secretary said at the White House podium, he's part of the president's team and a great American. This is Bovino's handle right here. So what exactly happened? Well, according to my sources, Trump stepped in and saved him. According to my sources, Trump heard that Greg Bovino, who he likes very much, had gotten, canned. And Trump said, the hell, I'm the president, to hell with this. No, you're not getting canned. We're going to work these things out. And that's what happened behind the scene. I told you to remain calm. Bovino will be fine. He is the target, and they need to get him off the street. Bovino has brought in a cleanup, the worst of its mission. Missions change. Let Homan do his job. People are saying, I stand with Greg Bovino. Trump saved Bovino. Sure, I'm not sure he needed saving. I think Greg Bovino has done an incredible job, and has, again, immaculate aura. I mean, come on, bring it back to the trench coat. Bovino went into Minnesota's commie hellscape and performed well. 0 right-wing keyboard warriors whining now. Could have done any better. Bovino's a patriot. If not perfect, patriots rarely are. Real ones fight. Cowards nitpick. So Donald Trump said he's sending in Tom Homan. That's fine. Donald Trump made this what seems like a concession to Tim Walz. In return, Tim Walz, this is the art of the deal, Tim Walz began enforcing the law and using Minnesota State Police resources to put down all of the violent protests last night. That's good. You can't fight. You cannot win the greater battle if blood is running through the streets and your entire landscape is a battlefield chaos. You can't do it. You can't do it. Trump can't win a PR war. He can't win the deportation war. He can't win anything if everything is on fire. And so, like, bringing calm and order to Minneapolis is a good thing. See, prosecuting all the left-wing terrorists is also a good thing. Now, Caroline Leavitt said at the White House yesterday, Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man. He's a great professional. He's very much going to continue to lead the Border Patrol. This must have taken the White House, by surprise, that then he got fired right after this, because it does seem like something that makes Caroline Leavitt look like something was happening behind her back, right? The White House says Bovino will remain in national leadership role. Federal authorities reshuffle immigration enforcement. Bovino was promoted. Pay attention, not demoted. There we go. This is confirmed reporting from Nick Sotor. I have confirmed this myself. Following our report, President Trump has personally stepped in and saved Greg Bovino's role at the Border Patrol. My sources tell me Kristi Noem fully backs this decision. Thank you, 80 million Americans voted for mass deportations. We have your back wholeheartedly.
Jacqueline Nungare, numbers, but your numbers, Jacqueline Nungare, well, actually, we never hear about her. There's a number, and it's called all of them.
How many should be deported?
There's a number, and it's called all of them.
This is why we like him.
You bet. All of them. We're not going to allow illegal aliens to walk the streets.
You wonder why the left wants to take him out. President Trump also asked if he's going to fire Kristi Noem today. Trump got angry, actually, at this question.
Kristi Noem going to step down?
No. Trump just moving along. Is Kristi Noem going to step down? Trump says, no. What are you talking about?
Now we have a border where no one is coming through. They come into our country only legally. So you have to remember those things. People forget as soon as you accomplish something, it goes into history, and nobody ever wants to talk about it. We had a border that caused all of this problem. Biden caused, and the Democrats caused this problem. They allowed tens of millions of people to come in. Many of them were murderers. Many were drug dealers, drug addicts, people from mental institutions. They allowed these people to violate our country, to come into our country. And that's what we're talking about. So if you remember, we had a horrible border, the worst border we've ever had, ever in history. People were flowing through by, we think, 25 million people, not to mention drugs and everything.
Trump very proud of the job that Kristi Noem's done, saying Kristi Noem put a stop to all of this. And yeah, I mean, I really do hope he does go back to California. Here's Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom celebrating that Greg Bovino has been removed from his role. Turns out that was fake news, nonetheless. He'll most likely go back to California and deport more illegals. Careful what you wish for, Gavin. And here's Greg Bovino posting already again from his account. There was a report that he had his account taken away from him. I think that did happen for a moment. Now here he is back. Convicted sexual predator arrested. After serving prison, he was removed from the U.S. Despite having broken our laws multiple times, he snuck back in, finding and arresting criminal aliens. This is what we are deployed to do around the country. Let's make sure that we post that. Very good. Nick Sotor had excellent reporting on all of this, and his reporting is correct. President Trump stepped in and saved his Border Patrol chief. And that's what we like to see. All right? Keep the team together. Keep the squad strong. It's Boy Benny. Let's share and subscribe.
All right, there you have it, folks. Let me click on the Rumble link and show you this video does come from Benny Johnson. I'm following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here. And sorry, I had to do a refresh on this. The sound was coming through on my headphones, but when I checked my phone, I wasn't getting it. It wasn't transmitting the sound out. And I don't know. I know that Rumble has had some issues. There was some issues yesterday with the thumbs up button. You know, I click my own videos. Okay, all right. I'll admit it. I give myself a thumbs up. All right. But when I went to the video, like I'm doing right now, it didn't show my thumbs up. It showed it was green, but it had 0 thumbs up. So, you know, I believe that Rumble is still being hacked mercilessly. So I stick with them because I can tell the truth. I put some of my videos over on YouTube and they get canceled. I share them on Facebook and other platforms and they get taken down. So Rumble, I can share this information out with you and it doesn't get taken down. All right. Let's move on here to Dr. Steve Turley. You won't believe the latest polls on Trump and immigration. Well, let's check it out.
The left has been utterly demoralized. They're becoming increasingly hopeless, unhinged, hysterical, but nothing prepared them for the polls that just dropped that showed Trump's approval ratings on immigration and deportation. Let's just put it this way. If you thought the left was devastated before, you ain't seen nothing yet. Hey, gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your Patriot Professor, here to help you make sense of the madness with breaking news and analysis that you're not going to get anywhere else. So you know what to do. Make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. For 6 weeks, the nation has been watching a literal blitzkrieg of thousands of ICE agents and Border Patrol taking over Minneapolis. 10,000 confirmed arrests and deportations in Minnesota alone over the course of the last year. Nearly half of those arrests and deportations happening in the last 6 weeks in this surge. Now, of course, this deportation operation hasn't been without incident. 2 people, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, end up getting themselves killed while interfering with federal law enforcement operations. But with all of that, we're now seeing a number of polls come in that give us a good idea of how the American people are responding to all of this. And let's just say, if the Democrats thought this was a winning issue for them, they're in for one rude awakening. RMG, one of the single most accurate pollsters of 2024, just dropped a bombshell. After everything people have seen coming out of Minneapolis, voters approve of the Trump administration's deportation of all illegal migrants by a 10-point margin, by double digits, 52 to 42. 10 point. It's an election. If it were an election, that would be called a blowout. That would be a landslide. But that is nothing compared to Mark Mitchell at Rasmussen. Again, Mark was one of the most accurate pollsters of 2024, a good friend of this channel. His polling shows a 62% approval among likely voters for Trump's program to find and deport immigrants who are here illegally. 55% want penalties on companies and corporations that hire illegals. And if you bought the legacy media's narrative that deporting illegals would cost Trump support among Latino voters, then you probably think gullible isn't in the dictionary. It's the exact opposite. Latinos love deportations. They love seeing MS-13 and TDA and drug pushers permanently kicked out of their neighborhoods. Look at these numbers. Again, this is from Rasmussen. Trump has surged among Latino voters by 30 points. He's now a +8 among Latinos, 53 to 45. We have never, ever seen a Republican with approval ratings like that among Hispanics. But we saw it spike right after the arrest of Maduro, right? The demographic that overwhelmingly supported that operation were particularly expat Venezuelans and Cubans, but Latinos in general. Trump is a hero as far as they're concerned. And just to round this all off, a recent Gallup poll found that a whopping 84% of Americans want voter ID laws enacted in all 50 states. 84%. Yeah, the feckless liberals in the Democratic Party are standing up against 84% of voters. Even CNN's Harry Enton had to admit that when it comes to border security and mass deportations, Americans are overwhelmingly on the side of Trump.
Yeah, sometimes I like blunt questions because they sort of get at the underlying feelings that people have. So this is about as blunt a question as you can get. Deport all immigrants here illegally. I will note the ABC News poll asked about undocumented immigrants. So we have slightly different questions, but these were all taken within the last month. And there's real uniformity here. That's what I really think you see. You see real uniformity. Deport all immigrants who are here illegally. 55% of the New York Times. Marquette, 64%. CBS News, 57%. ABC News with a slightly different question, 56%. So what you're seeing essentially here is a very clear indication that a majority of Americans, in fact, when they're asked this blunt question, which I believe gets at the underlying feelings, do in fact want to deport all immigrants who are here illegally. There's no arguing with these different numbers because they're all essentially the same across 4 different pollsters.
Listen, gang, it is flu season, which means it's also flu shot season. After everything we've been through over the last 5 years, the number of people of reviews from, and you're going to say 18% any sense. I mean, remember, residents only. Now, of course, if you're part of the legacy media's dwindling and dying audience, none of these polls makes any sense. I mean, remember, according to them, Hillary Clinton had a 91% chance of winning back in 2016. 91% chance of winning an election where she became the first Democrat to lose every single blue wall state in 40 years. Where Trump was the first Republican to win over 300 electoral votes in decades since George Bush Sr. did it. The legacy media lives in a reality of their own concoction, a manufactured cosmopolitan reality, in quotes, that lives and breathes by something called progressive realism. Now, if you don't know what progressive realism is, it's a radical ideology that believes that the arc of history inevitably bends towards a left-wing vision of social justice. So that means that inevitably, inexorably, no matter how inconvenient the interruption or the interim, i.e. Trump, eventually life is going to get back to normal. Meaning that the world is going to once again embrace the liberal consensus of open borders and shipping manufacturing overseas and the uncontested dominance of woke social values. But what if progressive realism isn't real? What if progressive realism isn't true? What if the arc of history actually doesn't inevitably move in the direction of liberal emancipatory politics? What if history actually moves the other way towards embracing nation, culture, custom, tradition, religion? What if populations are, as we speak, overwhelmingly and decisively and permanently rejecting progressive realism? Well, the answer to that, if that were true, you would see at least two things. You would see all the insane hysteria that we've been witnessing in Minneapolis when psychopathic leftists become mentally unhinged, and you would see precisely the kind of polling that we've been seeing. You see, the American people, and frankly, populations all over the world, are fully embracing border security and national sovereignty. There's just no way around that. As you just saw in all those polls that Harry Enton had put together on CNN, border security is the number one issue driving voters today. Not just here in the United States. Border security and national and civilizational sovereignty is the single most popular political issue in the West and all over the world today. We've talked about this on a number of our other videos before, but the major current that's driving the support is what's called post-security politics. You might want to write that down, post-security politics. And that's where concerns about border security, economic security, and cultural security are all adding up ultimately to one thing. And that is a worldwide populist revolution that's changing planetary politics literally like never before. I mean, we're seeing it everywhere. Japan just elected their most nationalist populist prime minister since World War II. Nationalist populist parties have grown 400% in Europe over the last 2 decades. They're now the number one party, most popular party in the UK, France, Germany, and Italy. Latin America is shifting overwhelmingly to the right in election after election after election. India's gone full Hindu nationalist. Putin's, of course, resurrected Orthodox Russia. Xi's reigniting Confucian China. Everywhere we look, national and civilizational identity is being reasserted through border security, economic security, and cultural security. That's the politics, the post-security politics of the 21st century. Progressive realism has been replaced with post-security politics. That's the politics that are causing Minneapolis liberals to collapse into psychotic hysteria. And that's the politics that are giving Trump some of his biggest polling numbers yet. Hey, before you go, gang, do not miss out every...
All right, let me go ahead and show you that this video does come from Dr. Steve Turley.
Hey, before you go...
Great information. Great information. He always likes to put out those polling numbers, and he relies on pollsters that actually are pretty freaking accurate, okay? I am following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and see what Wendy Bell has to say on the lamest show on earth. There we go. Look at that. Boy, that's a nice thumbnail. Okay, let's check out what she has to say right after her Pledge of Allegiance.
Is optics. And the optics are often such bogus representations of what's really going on, right? Think about the youngest generation right now on their phones and what they post online. The optics always makes young people, this is what they do. They put their images out online, and we do it as well. But everything's just so. The girls pose with their legs just like this, and their hips are turned. And now the big thing is everybody's drinking martinis. Oh, look at us as we clink our martinis. And all of this faux, oh, look how sophisticated we are. And meanwhile, everybody's scrambling to get by and can't move out of their mom and dad's house because rent's too expensive, right? The optics that you put out there into the universe about who you are, what you are, and who you believe, what you believe in, is often so different than the reality. And I think America is so over it. I'm so done with it, right? Like the optics of war. You always have to have a bad guy. There's always going to be something you got to fight for. Oh my gosh, let's get involved. Let's send a bunch of stuff. Let's just slow down a little bit here, right? Let's talk about Minnesota for a second. Let's talk about what happened in Minnesota yesterday. Because the optics are, the left is desperate for you and for me to believe that what we're seeing in Minneapolis is the result of a president who is just this heavy-handed dictator who doesn't care about people, and he's sending in his Gestapo to go round up people, drag them out of their houses, kicking and screaming, leaving kids on the side of the road, not caring about anything, right? And so what did President Trump do yesterday? And we're going to talk about this in the second half hour, but he basically sent a changing of the guard, right? He pulled out people that weren't necessarily working, put in people to smooth things over, said, we're going to cooperate with you. We're going to do whatever we can to work together. Let's get this figured out. So the criminal illegals are plucked from our society and sent home. And everybody else, you guys do you. I'm not looking for you. Even if you're an illegal alien in this country, if you're not a criminal, you're not on my list. That is what Trump said. The optics changed of the story overnight in Minnesota. So Ilhan Omar, representative, who's in the crosshairs of not just being a dirtbag, marrying her brother, and being a mooch leech on the American citizen, which is so deeply offensive. This woman came from a country of rampant illiteracy. It's like a 70% illiteracy rate, right? These people live in an environment thousands of miles away from us. Civil war and poverty and famine and wacky clan like inbreeding stuff. Why don't you come on over to the Minnesota area? Sounds perfect. A great place for you guys to go. They set up shop. They multiply. And then all of a sudden, everybody's rich, sending suitcases of cash back home to the homeland. And we're all supposed to be like, that is really something. I mean, like, of course that would happen. Ilhan Omar is the crux of this evil triad that we're seeing, right? She's the one who passed the Meals Act in Congress that basically opened the floodgates of all of this fraud. And there's a reason she's worth now over $30 million. She's being investigated. People are looking deeply at her. House Oversight is investigating. So's the Ethics Committee investigating her specifically. So what does she do? She goes yesterday back to her state where she's not really from. None of these idiots are, right? And she goes there and she has a town hall meeting with a bunch of people who are her sycophants, her supporters. And there's some guy. And by the way, the whole point of the town hall isn't to talk about what can we do, Minneapolis? How can we rebuild? How can we come together? How can we stop all of this? It's abolish ICE, right? It's abolish ICE. It's about all of this. Get rid of Kristi Noem. She's got to be impeached, blah, 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 and some guy in the front row who a camera is on, which is wild because there's cutaways of this guy. He looks agitated. He's some 55-year-old guy, whatever. And he gets up with something in his hand. He like spritzes her with it, like, psh, psh, you know? And she's like, ah! And she like lunges at him to try to hit it away. And then somebody kind of sort of tackles him because he kind of staggers away. And then like somebody jumps up and gets him to the ground. And she F-bombs him, sitting congresswoman. Effing a-hole, super classy. Stay classy, Ilhan, right? As people in the audience are like, oh, what did he spritz? What did he spray? It smells bad. And then we're all like, wait, what just happened? Some goofball in the front row. Pause. It's like he waited for her to drop the money line. And she needs to be impeached. And then he gets up and like sprays something on her that smells bad. And she, instead of recoiling and being like, oh, she like lunges for the guy. Okay, she's all of 100 pounds soaking wet. Come on. And then afterwards, she's like, as things settle down, Ilhan Omar is like, just know, Minnesota, that we're Minnesota strong and I will not be bullied. And it's like, did you just juicy small yay, everybody? I mean, I know it's not walking around your apartment after you were apparently attacked by two black dudes with MAGA hats on who spritzed chlorine on you and gave you a couple punches, allegedly, and put a noose on your neck and said, this is MAGA country. But it smells kind of just as stupid, doesn't it? The optics are completely unbelievable. Who this guy was, what he was thinking, how it's all going to play out, I don't even care because we remember how the story goes, right? Let's talk about what Trump said about it. And his response, he didn't even know. He's like, look, Ilhan Omar, I think, is a criminal and I don't pay attention to her. All she does is bitch. This is what he said. No, I don't think about her. I think she's a fraud. I really don't think about that. She probably had herself sprayed knowing her. Well, isn't that interesting, Mr. President? Let's go over a few things that you and I have watched the optics of and have sat back and said, that's probably one of the dumber presentations I've ever seen. It's bad High School Musical. Remember when Jamal Bowman pulled the fire alarm because he was stalling a floor vote that wasn't going the Democrats' way and he needed to buy some time. And so the whole Capitol complex is evacuated. And afterwards, he's like, oh, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was doing. And you're like, really? The entire January 6th thing? That was all optics. That was all for your enjoyment to see what was going on there. So burned in your mind would be smoke and chaos and right? How about Democrats? Okay, being the party of joy. Remember how they tried to fly that one out for a while? That was the optical narrative. We're just such great, joyful people. We're going to come back to our joyful roots. Lasted 7 seconds. How about Joe Biden? He's seasoned. He runs circles around me. The guy is like, he's incredible. And then like 9 months later, Jake Tapper wrote his book. He's like, I had no idea he was demented, but buy my book. How about taking a knee with the stupid kente cloths? How about that optical narrative, right? We're down with all of you. Okay, kente cloths aren't from America, but okay. How about the Patriot Front? You guys remember these goofballs who'd walk around? It was during Joe Biden's presidency, and these guys would be like 50 of them all dressed the same, and they were supposed to be some splinter group off of a neo-Nazi organization that's all about like white nationalism and whatnot. Those people, I've never met them. I don't know who they are, but they trotted themselves out all looking the same, like total goofballs, as though you and I are supposed to be like, oh my gosh, there are white supremacists in America. Didn't work. How about AOC's fake arrest? Remember that in 2022 when she was protesting for abortion, right? And then she faked that she was getting arrested and handcuffed, and she had her hands behind her back as somebody's like walking her away, but there were no handcuffs on her. Don't let the optics get in the way of a good story, AOC. How about Chris Cuomo coming out of the basement after COVID? Brock, you remember this one. This was one of our favorites. It was
yeah. All sweaty.
He had done
medium.
He had done like 50 push-ups beforehand, and he like busts out and he's like, like he had just come out of Joe Biden's hyperbaric chamber for a month, and he's like, oh, but of course we had known he had broken protocol because some bicyclist was riding by his Hamptons house, and he was like, hey, you're Chris Cuomo. You have COVID. You should be inside. Chris Cuomo was like, oh yeah? You want to fight, Buster? It was so stupid. You guys, all of this, Ilhan Omar being spritzed by something, she's not even worried about the toxicity of whatever the chemical or is, whatever. She makes no mention of the odor. She just drops an F-bomb, lunges at a guy who looks like he wants to harm her. Speaking as a woman, I'm going to say that we don't normally lunge at people who look like we're going to attack us, okay? But chuck all that out the window, ladies and gentlemen, because it is the optics Olympics, and they need you in order to win the gold. Okay, so don't be distracted, Donald Trump says. All this stuff going on in Minneapolis, all this stuff with Ilhan Omar. Yeah, keep your eye on the ball. And President Trump knows exactly what it is. The dude, I'll tell you what, unstoppable. Next on the Wendy Bell Radio Network.
All right, let me move this up here past our commercial break so we can get back to more good stuff.
Isn't it funny?
Still here.
It's magic, you know.
Welcome back to the Wendy Bell Radio program. So isn't it curious? And Brock just brought this up in the commercial break. He's like, isn't the timing of Ilhan Omar getting spritzed by some guy, whatever the substance was, what did that effectively do? It changed the conversation away from Ilhan Omar's husband and this bogus winery that, from what we can tell, has apparently generated tens of millions of dollars in revenue while being closed, while not selling any wine that we could find, right? By not having an actual storefront or any demonstrable links for the buying public. And you have to scratch your head and be like, huh. And then you know that her husband is a rat fink as well, because he's under investigation for swindling a bunch of cannabis guys out of their money to invest in his winery, which doesn't apparently exist. And now we've got House Oversight like tightening the noose, investigating him, Ethics Committee looking at her. Everybody's looking at the Somalian fraud, blaming Nick Shirley, of course. Damn him for exposing it. That's an optical Olympic right there. And all of this happens yesterday to do what? Suck the oxygen out of the investigation into Ilhan Omar's a very possible criminality and play it as though some MAGA whack job decided to lunge at her because he was like, don't you talk about Kristi Noem like that. I'm going to get you spritz, right? Like, that doesn't add up, okay? That's poor execution because you're all dumb who think you can fool us, right? Trump says he knows exactly what's going on. Don't take your eye off the ball. The focus, they stole $19 billion. Here's the president on the Will Cain show yesterday.
So in Minnesota, they think it's $19 billion. If they think it's $19 billion, triple it or quadruple it. And if we catch a lot of this fraud, and I felt it for a long time, but now we know what's happening. And the answer is, yeah, there will be accountability. It's one of the little problems. You know, I happen to think, and I've said it from the beginning, that a lot of what's going on with respect to Minneapolis, you know, with what's happening with all the hoopla, is so people don't talk about.
You think it's a distraction?
I've said it from day one. It's a distraction because what you don't see is that we have hundreds of accountants from Todd and from all of the different people. We have hundreds of accountants going over everything that's happening. And we're finding fraud on top of fraud on top of fraud. And I think that they don't want that to happen. You're talking about $19 billion. Probably that's a minimal number. Now, you take that and you go to California. You think California is better? I would say California is worse. It's totally out of control. They don't know what they're doing out there.
My gosh, so we have hundreds of CPAs, bean counters, sniffing up the skirts of all of these expenditures. They are panicked. Walls closing in. I personally think Tim Walz did probably make a deal with Trump. I bet you Tim Walz was like, look, I'll roll, I'll talk, I'll do whatever, but I got to walk away clean. And I'm feeling like writing a book that should be a New York Times #1 bestseller, right? Did you know that former President Joe Biden's Department of Justice, says the New York Times, began an investigation into the finances of Representative Ilhan Omar, the Somali refugee turned far-left politician, after reports suggested that she had amassed a multi-million-dollar net worth since being elected to Congress, the New York Times reports. This week, the Times reported that the DOJ opened that probe into Omar's finances in 2024, suggesting that President Trump's questioning of how Omar got her wealth was also a question raised by federal prosecutors under the prior administration. The Justice Department, it says, this is the Times reporting, under the Biden administration, opened this investigation into Omar, Democrat of Minnesota, in 2024 to scrutinize her finances, campaign spending, and interactions with a foreign citizen, according to people with knowledge of the matter. This week, Trump posted to Truth Social remarks about the DOJ investigation into Omar, saying the DOJ and Congress are looking at Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who left Somalia with nothing and is now reportedly worth more than $44 million. Time will tell all. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President BJT. Now, do you think that Ilhan Omar hasn't had her phone ringing off the hook? Oh my gosh. Did you see what Trump wrote about you? Of course she saw. She's like, you know what? I think we need a town hall in Minnesota. We need to do this stats. It's almost like you guys can connect the dots. And they know you can. All right, so when we come back on this program, we're going to talk about what the president did in his art of the deal. And the beautiful thing about the president's deals is that he always gets what he wants, what he originally starts off for. He always gets it. And at the same time, he makes his opponent, who he is drubbing, feel like they, in fact, have won. It is a beautiful piece of, let's just say, classic manipulation. And he's done it in Minnesota. And we're going to talk about it next on the Wendy Bell Radio Network.
All righty, I've got a little extra time, so I'm just going to go ahead and move up here to this next segment. And let's listen to this. It's good stuff. Don't you think? Let me know, folks. Give me some information.
No, I haven't heard any
chat.
Tomorrow.
Here we go. Enjoy. Chat with me.
Welcome back to the Wendy Bell radio program. So Tom Homan goes to Minneapolis. You know, it's interesting when you consider how President Trump handles all of his negotiations. He tells you what he wants, and he amps it up by about 50%, right? He tells you what he wants, and then he asks for the world. And when he asks for the world, the person who's going to have to give something in order for the president to get the world has to bitch about it and be like, oh, can you believe that? Be outraged. That's ridiculous. And they'd be like, I'll never do that. I mean, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that. And then President Trump is like, oh, well, I guess it's for the good of the people. Okay, we'll do what you want. And what they want is what he wanted from the beginning, right? And so that person is like, I told him. Meanwhile, the president's like, okay, whatever. I got what I wanted. Whether it's tariffs, right? Traveling all over the world, talking to all these foreign leaders. Here's the deal. You can play with us. You don't play with us. However it works. Your choice. But the golden pathway to the next age of enlightenment is this way. Do you want to come and take my hand? And people are like, yeah, I'll do whatever you want. He did that in Minneapolis. President Trump, when he talked about immigration, he said that the 20 million people who came across the border was an absolute disaster. His number one objective with the border, close it. Next, find the people who are dangerous, the criminals. Find them, arrest them, and deport them. Now, the other stuff that you're hearing about in Minnesota, right? They're snatching people out of their homes. They're rounding up people at Home Depot. Oh my gosh, an abuela kidnapped off the street. They're disappearing. President Trump is like, you know what? I really don't like those optics. I'll give you that. Jacob Fry and Tim Walz, I don't like it either. And I really didn't like the two people got killed. And I'm particularly worried, the president said, and it bothers me deeply, about the death, about Renee Good being a mom. And a mom was shot and killed. This has to be toned down. I agree with you. Let's work together and do that, right? And so what does he get out of them? You got to cooperate with the feds. State and local police have got to cooperate with the feds. You got to turn over your criminal, illegal aliens that you know are in the system. And you got to help us get the rest of the criminals that we're looking for to get them out. Didn't say anything about illegals who've been here for a while. He didn't talk about people who crossed into the country under Joe Biden who haven't been terrorizing our citizens. He said criminals. And that's what they said they're going to help him with. So there is the deal. Trump gets what he wants. And now the ball is in Jacob Fry and Tim Walz's court. The president says, I agree. Let's pull out the guy from Border Patrol, right? Let's pull out Greg Bovino, who's done a good job, but he seems like a lightning rod. We're going to pull out Kristi Noem. She seems to be generating a lot of fuss, and she's getting a lot of people aggravated. Okay, let's pull them out. We'll put in somebody who's got a lot of experience, Tom Homan, 40-odd years, 6 presidents, whatever the case is that he's worked for. And let's get the process started. Let's calm things down. You guys make your city safe, and we'll do what we set out to do and pull out these criminal illegals. Okay, now it's up to Jacob Fry and Tim Walz. What are you going to say? So let's start with this. Tom Homan arrives like last night at 9 o'clock, right? And he calls Tim Walz, and he's like, look, let's talk. Ready to talk? And they talk. And he's like, this is a productive starting point. Border czar Tom Homan revealed that he met with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Fry, as well as other law enforcement officials, adding that the meetings were a productive starting point. Homan explained in a post on X that they had discussed the issues on the ground in Minnesota. He also pointed out that President Donald Trump has been clear that he wants American cities to be safe and secure for law-abiding residents. Today, I met with Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, and the top law enforcement officials to discuss the issues on the ground in Minnesota. We all agree that we need to support our law enforcement officers and get criminals off the streets. While we don't agree on everything, these meetings were a productive starting point, and I look forward to more conversations with key stakeholders in the days ahead. Okay. So while Homan spoke well of the meetings with Walz and Fry, he did not make any announcements about agreements or concessions being made at all. So that's how he's presenting it. The president said he wants this to be quieted. He wants the criminals off the street. He wants the law-abiding folks of this country to be able to be outside or what have you and not live in terror or in fear of some rando nearby that came into this country under Joe Biden, right? So let's talk about what Tim Walz said. And he has a very different approach than Jacob Fry. Breitbart, still, we're going to stay on that source. Walz, on meeting with Tom Homan, he said there was a tone shift. It was progress. I think President Trump is probably in his phone call with Tim Walz. I think he probably offered an off-ramp. I believe in a very brief amount of time, they probably worked on something relatively quickly to allow Tim Walz to kind of Scooby out of the spotlight and maybe save his own backside. Tuesday on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360, Governor Walz said there was a tone shift during his meeting with border czar Tom Homan. He said, well, Tom is a professional, which is a lot more than Bovino and Kristi Noem. But look, I think this thing that we said, we're very clear about this, that we need these folks out of Minnesota and that we need justice for Renee Good and for Alex. And those were the things that we came with. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is that this tone was different. There was a tone shift. I wish it was because of the horrific, shooting that someone saw some morality, but I think it's probably the press, Tim Walz said. With that being said, he says, I'm not interested in a more efficient metro surge. I'm ready for them to get out of here. And I think that's where Minnesotans are. So it was progress. Takes digs at Trump's deputies, right? Takes digs at the process, but it's like, there's a tone shift and we're going to be making some progress here. Not the same story, I don't believe, with Jacob Fry. Sounds like he wants the protesting and the fighting in the streets to rage on. And there's this great article from Post Millennial I want to read to you because it kind of underscores maybe he hasn't gotten the same deal that Tim Walz. Maybe I'm full of it, but I think there was something happening. Fry says Minneapolis won't comply with federal immigration law after Homan meeting. Now, why would he do that? And Trump actually put out a truth about that. Would somebody like to tell Mayor Fry that he should probably cooperate with us, that the optics that he's creating are poor? This is super interesting because Trump looks like the olive branch giver. He's the guy who's like, look, I ran on something. I won on that. The majority of people don't want criminal, illegal aliens in their country. They don't want criminals, period. So I ran on this. We're going to provide these services. Can we change the optics of it? Can we pull some people back and make some personnel moves like any CEO does of a company? And he's the CEO of America. Yes. And that's what I've done. And we're going to hopefully calm things down, get law and order in gear. And here's Jacob Fry. I will not comply. We will not work with ICE. That's a very interesting approach. And this is where the optics Olympics get very interesting because the public perception of what is going on there is going to bleed its way into the midterms. Trump is either going to win on this issue or he's not. And he has no intention of dying on this hill. I want you to hear Tom Homan on with Laura Ingraham yesterday, and he's cut and dry. He's like, look, I've been doing this a long time. There are rules. You're welcome to come protest. We believe in your right. However, there is a line. And as we've all experienced, it's not in your best interests to cross it. Let us do our jobs and let us get out of your community. Listen.
This job and these people who want to say follow ICE, and film ICE, you know what? You can protest. They have that right. But when you cross that line, and we've proven it, if you interfere or impede or assault an ICE officer, you will be prosecuted. And one thing I'm pushing for right now, Laura, we're going to create a database where those people that are arrested for interference, impediment, assault, we're going to make them famous. We're going to put their face on TV. We're going to let their employers in their neighborhoods, in their schools, know who these people are. Because as you said, a lot of these people, they say they're taking time off work to protest. I bet you a lot of them are calling in sick. I bet you a lot of their employers don't know what they're doing. But we're going to make sure everybody knows who they are. We're going to broadcast. They want to broadcast the ICE officer that was nearly killed all over the internet. We're going to broadcast every one of these people we arrest.
I think it's a very interesting conversation. Come if you want. Keep your distance. If you need to shoot and shoot video of what we're doing, whatever. But do not cross that line. We will find you if you are a malignant ne'er-do-well, and we're going to create some kind of a system that we can put your picture out on the internet with all of our social media affiliates and the new media from the independent journalists out there who have now supplanted the mainstream media, right? We'll get your faces out there. We'll make you famous. Absolutely. We're going to do our jobs. We'd like to do it safely. Please stay away, or else. Mayor Jacob Fry writes this. Today, Chief O'Hara and I, this is the guy also who's not from Minnesota, who's the police chief of Minneapolis, and I met with border czar Tom Homan and had a productive conversation. I reiterated that my main ask is for Operation Metro Surge to end as quickly as possible. Public safety works best when it's built on community trust, not tactics that create fear or division. Isn't that such an interesting line? Do you ever notice how they're never interested in the fear and the division that people who've invaded this country with criminal records present to all of us? Why are they never worried about that? Why are they never worried about that? Why don't they talk about it on the news? How about the 37-year-old woman who was found beheaded in a container on the property of an illegal alien with a long criminal record from Mexico.
Good night.
Right? How about the mother and the daughter who were killed last July by a Mexican criminal illegal alien with a rap sheet longer than my arm who was driving drunk and without a license? Why do these names never matter? And now Jacob Fry is saying, you know what? I'm not interested in cooperating with you. And Donald Trump said, little man, okay. Try me. When we come back on the Wendy Bell radio program, Kevin.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pause that there. And let me give you a little hint here that this video will be in my daily news wrap. Okay? As always. All right, this video does come from Wendy Bell Radio. I am following her channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Okay, jumping back here, let me copy these chats into a comment so they will be permanent with this video. Here we go. Boom. Let me clean this up a little bit. Oh, here we go. All right, Foxy Grandma joined us. There we go. Okay, let me remind you that this information that I've shared with you here comes directly from the producers. I have the links to the producers' video and the links to the producers' channel here. All these videos that I shot, I don't get any commissions or royalties for doing this, but all these videos that I've shared here are videos that I've posted on Murtech.com, where I have over 55 no-nonsense, common sense, logic and truth videos, kind of information that you're not going to get from the mainstream media. All right, I'd like to share all this information with you, but unfortunately I don't have the time to do so, and that's why I've put together my daily news wrap-up playlist, where I've got 20 videos in here. Wendy Bell's going to lead it off. Benny Johnson, SGT Report, On the Fringe, McWater's Effect, Charlie Kirk Show, Bannon's War Room, American Center for Law and Justice, Black Conservative Perspective, Devoid Darkins, a lot of great information. About 9 hours worth of stuff here. So go ahead and take a break. I'll have this set up about 9:30. Grab a donut and a cup of coffee or a sandwich and a soft drink or a beer or a nice glass of wine and some cheese, and join me back here at 9:30 and we'll get this going. But in the meantime, I do want to thank you for being here. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.